So we're here, we're in the cellar.
With the one and only.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for letting us come see your cellar and tell us about your new book.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Not my cellar though.
Well, okay,
Tom's cellar.
Tom's
We
cellar.
borrowed Tom's cellar.
We borrowed Tom's cellar.
Borrowed Tom's cellar.
So obviously you've been like climbing a long time, but what kind of got you into crack climbing? What made you start crack climbing?
I think it was probably when I was 17 or 18, and it would have been around the time that I met Tom.
Okay.
And it was more Tom who just got into crack climbing, and I remember he was training for a route called Green Spit, which is out in Italy. And then he asked me if I wanted to go on the same trip as him.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I knew he was going like on that route, so then I was like, well, you know, I need to probably start doing some sort of crack climbing and that kind of thing. So that's kind of initially probably what got me into like trying it out, I would say. And before that, like I knew how to jam and that stuff from like climbing on the gritstone, but I'd never really specifically gone and thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna go on a try this specific crack on this trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So,
kind of where it came from.
like one of the things from flicking through your book that kind of amazed me was like I thought I knew how to hand jam and things like that, and then it's like looking at it and going, there are so many different types of like finger jams and locks and jams and things like that. Was that like did you self-teach yourself? Was it kind of trial and error, or did you have somebody showing you all these different techniques? Or
I guess the really basic stuff like hand jamming and fist jamming and that sort of stuff, like I kind of just learnt it from growing up. Like I already knew how to do that kind of stuff. Maybe not properly, but I had a good idea, you know, before climbing with Tom. But then it was from climbing with Tom and actually just going and trying these harder routes, and then also like going and doing first ascents, and like literally it was trial and error.
Yeah.
And because there wasn't any information out there really of like how to do it, it was more just like if you didn't know how to do something, it was just like looking at photos on the internet of like what other people were doing, and then like going and trying it out yourself, and then eventually you just like build up this bank of knowledge.
Yeah.
And then you understand what works and doesn't work. But it's probably taken me like 10 to 12 years to be able to build up that sort of bank of knowledge, I would say. Yeah, of just like trying stuff out and it working and not working. Yeah.
Cool.
But I guess I'm a bit of like I like to analyse things, you know.
Okay.
So
yeah.
If something doesn't work, I like to work out why it's not working and then try and make it work. So that's it. Yeah.
Great. I mean, I sort of first came across yourself and Tom really with when WideBoyz came out and huge, and it was a massive inspiration for me seeing you guys training stuff. What made you think let's train really hard, let's go to America, let's try and climb like Century Crack, what was that kind of inspiration for that?
From?
Yeah.
I think it was initially it came from that very first trip that we did to Italy, because as well as going trying this route called Green Spit, we also did lots of other first ascents in the same valley.
Yeah.
And quite often when you're sort of like looking up from the valley and looking at the bits of rock you want to go and climb, obviously the crack lines are the most striking lines. And then you walk up the hillside and you get to the bottom of the routes, and then you realise that the crack climbs are offwards, because they're the ones that you can see from the road.
Yeah.
So then they're the ones who kind of ended up climbing on that trip, and then we just sort of got into a roll of offward thing, and then we were sort of like, we enjoyed it and we enjoyed that sort of like learning process, and then we were like, let's go to America, they've got really good offwards, and then because we were like, let's go to America, we were like, we need to do it properly.
Yeah.
And we already knew about that project, the Century Crack project, from an old magazine article.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where the idea of that came from. It was sort of like, let's go to America to climb offwits, and then there's this project, let's do this project, and it was like, let's do this properly. alright, okay, let's train for 2 years and then let's go and hope for the best. Yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
So obviously you've got like all the crack stuff in here, and you train a lot on that. But what other things do you sort of train outside of the crack stuff? Is it like lots of core training? Are you training your feet to be able to lock into place? Are you what kind of other bits of training do you do for crack climbing?
So we I guess I'll sort of like narrow it down to off-widthing.
Okay,
so when we were training for the America trip, that off-widthing trip, we built this off-width which is just behind us, and because that was the same width as Sentry Crack.
Yeah.
And then when we were climbing and practicing on that, we worked out what muscle group was failing, so what gave out first.
Yeah.
And then we went and did like supplementary exercises
to work that independently
from climbing. And then we'd like go back on, we'd go back on the off-width, and like for example, like core muscles and stuff were the first things that kind of gave out. And then after you train those for a while, we found that it was our biceps gave out and our core was like strong enough. So then, we did lots of like bicep work and exercises. And then we found out that our legs gave out. So then we did like leg work and that sort of stuff. So it was just, finding the things, because it was just trial and error, we didn't really know. So we just found the things which gave out, then that got better, and then something else gave out, and then that got better, and then, it was just like that. So I guess like in exercises we were just doing like bar core work and lots of floor core work.
Okay.
But for this stuff it was like very endurance based, so not necessarily like being able to do front levers or anything, but just like loads of sit-ups with like mild weight,
so you go for reps rather than
reps. So that's the sort of stuff we did for that. I remember we did like lots of like bicep work and bicep curls, and it's funny because I tried doing some the other day, and I actually just tried doing what I did back then, and tried doing it now. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god! That was totally like the amount of reps we were doing. Yeah, flipping ridiculous. And I couldn't do it now.
Tell us about the book. Who's it for? What's it designed for, and how can it help people with their climbing?
Yeah, so I guess I first decided to write the book just because there wasn't really any information about crack climbing. There are a few other bits, like there's basically one other book and like other bits of information spread about all over the place, but I didn't really think you couldn't find one point where like everything was. So like my initial idea was I wanted to create that one point where you could go. It's like if you want to learn about hand jamming, you can go here. If you want to learn about off-widthing in like this size of roof crack, then you can go to this book. And it's more like a point of reference, rather than a storybook. It's like, it's purely for that purpose.
Like a manual.
Manual. Yeah. So that's like why I wanted to create it, because I felt like I had all this knowledge in my head, and I just wanted to like put it somewhere and be able to let people, use it. Yeah. And I guess it's broken down into. I think it's 12 chapters, and it just goes up from the smallest size, so like just fitting the tips of your fingers in the cracks, right up to the biggest sizes where you're actually like body bridging between, and each chapter is a different size. And then within the chapters I've sort of broken it down into 3 parts. So it's like showing you the technique that you use in the crack, so how your hand or body should be orientated and moves and jams within the crack. And then the second part is how your body as a whole should be positioned on the crack to enable you to move, on certain cracks or angles of cracks. And then the third thing is how you actually move on the crack. So it goes right from like using placing the jams and the techniques right through to moving and the movement.
Yeah.
So I just did the 12 chapters of different sizes and then broke it into those three things in each kind of. Yeah.
And for somebody who's like never crack climbed before, what sort of advice would you give them, like key tips in summary from the book?
Key tips in summary.
Just like some real touching your first crack climb.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that you always go to, and I say it's like the staple of anybody's crack climbing diet, is like the hand jam, basically, because like lots of other jams, and especially an off-wit thing, are like built upon being able to hand jam properly. And if you can sort of like understand the concept of the hand jamming, then you'll be able to understand concepts of how and why the jams work. So if I'm ever teaching somebody who's never crack climbed before, then I'll always show them like thumbs up hand jam, thumbs down hand jam, like how they work, why they work, and then you can build on that. So for people who have never got into it, they're the like
Start
the
with the
first,
hand jams.
start with the hand jams,
Yeah.
because also when you get a good hand jam, it should feel like, hanging off a bar, it should feel like a jug.
Yeah.
That's how good it should feel.
I've yet to reach that. Jumping, I think.
More practice required.
Yeah. Were there any like hiccups with writing the book, or what was the hardest thing about writing it? 'Cause it's quite a...
Well, that's a good point. I think it was trying to sort of. It's a very technical. It's a very technical thing, and trying to describe how to do those things and how to position your hand, and also like where the pressure and movement of the body parts is.
Yeah.
I think like trying to demonstrate that was the hardest thing. But when I've done each one, I've just tried to do it in stages. So like stage one, outside the crack, orientate your hand and arm in this way, and just describe how it's done, and then inserting it into the crack, and then just describe how you do it, and then what you do when it's in the crack, and just doing it in steps. So it's sort of like easy to follow, but it is quite hard describing, like, and then also not making it too boring. Like just trying to have a little bit of fun things in there as well. So trying to describe, the position your hand or arm might be, like relating it to something in everyday life, like whatever it might be, like saluting somebody or turning a key or that kind of thing. And I think that sort of helps.
Yeah, you got some really nice analogies in there.
Yeah. And then in the illustrations, I think the illustrations were like absolutely key to making it.
Yeah, they really help you understand where the pressure is.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And how the movements are. They're some really good illustrations.
Yeah, that was like a massive part of the book as well. Like I spent so long getting those arrows.
Yeah.
Like in the
get them right.
There's like pressure point arrows and then movement arrows and then like direction of pull arrows and like the amount of time I spent trying to get those right. Yeah. And then I'd be working with the publisher, and then I'd go back and I'd be like, oh no, like, I've just done it wrong. And then going to change it all and stuff. So I spent a long time trying to get those right. But I think the illustrations give a good, first, when you look at the book, they're sort of easy to look at, and you can gain a lot from them. Yeah. And then you read the text, and then that gives it a bit more, I think.
All right, I'm thinking that you're a bit of an artist as well.
I do a bit of drawing, yeah.
Did you?
But I didn't do the illustrations.
Okay,
no, I had somebody else do the illustrations, who's actually an illustrator. I worked with a guy called Alex, and he was really good. Yeah, I mean the illustrations are amazing.
Yeah.
That's sort of
super clear.
Yeah, that's sort of what makes the book look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you flick through it.
And he did a really good job. So I basically made a perspex crack, sort of
Okay.
like
Yeah.
a see-through crack.
Yeah.
And then I did the jamming, and I took photos of me doing the jamming techniques, whatever they are.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of shenanigans. And then I sent him all the photos, and then he drew from the photos. Yeah.
Got
I mean,
all that.
you could just hold your hand up and do like this sort of thing, but I actually did it in between a crack in case you have to do like twisting.
Yeah.
And to show, because in some of them you can see the sort of like skin. He's
Yeah.
illustrated so you can see the skin moving and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. So, yeah.
Like I
Okay.
worry sometimes when I crack climb that I'll get stuck.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten stuck?
Yeah,
I
people do
probably
ask this
stuck, yeah.
actually. I've never actually gotten
Wedged.
anything wedged or stuck. But I remember one time Tom managed to get his foot stuck. He was hanging upside down somewhere, and the only way to get his foot out was take his shoe off his
Okay.
foot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so his
Yeah.
boot was like left in the crack, and then he came out, and then he could wiggle the boot out afterwards.
Okay.
But I've never managed to get anything stuck. But I have heard of like a couple of stories of people like getting knees stuck.
Yeah.
Like in Offwit thing. There's a really famous YouTube video actually.
I think we've
Oh,
seen
the,
it.
the,
Yeah.
the
The boot-
hungover guy.
Yeah, the boogie till you puke, boogie till you poop video.
Yeah, that one.
where he gets his knee stuck. But I mean, I've never really heard of anybody getting so stuck that they've
Yeah, you see?
Okay.
had to be like,
We've got to go full commitment next
Nothing
Shit,
to
or
worry about.
something.
Yeah.
yeah, you can always just get like the vegetable oil and lube your
Leave
knee
it
up
in,
or
yeah.
something.
So, in your book, you've
Yeah.
got a pop quiz, and you ask loads of famous climbers, like little questions about their crack climbing,
Yeah.
things like that. But
You're gonna ask me?
yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't answer it.
No, I
We
didn't
were going
answer.
through it.
No.
You were
I didn't
saying-
interview myself.
No. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to ask you your own pop quiz
Okay, yeah, go for it.
questions.
Yeah.
Finger cracks or offwits?
I'd definitely go for Offwits.
Offwits.
Just because it's just feels finger cracks feel more like sport climbing,
Okay,
and
yeah.
Offwit thing feels more like a struggle.
It's more of a fight.
It's more of a fight and it's very technical, and I like Offwit thing. Go for Offwit.
Cool. Stemming or roof cracks?
Definitely roof cracks. Yeah, definitely. But probably just because I've done more of it and I enjoy it. Yeah, roof cracks.
Hand jam or hand stack?
Hand stack. Definitely hand stack, just because of the Offwit thing. Offwit thing. So yeah.
Knee lock or chicken wing?
Go knee lock. Yeah, because when you get knee lock, it's absolutely bomber, and it's like a no hands rest. So you get a good knee lock, and it's like a saviour. So, go knee lock. Yeah.
Tape or no tape?
Tape. Definitely tape.
Definitely tape.
Definitely
Yeah.
tape. Yeah. Yeah, you should like people. You get some people and they're like, tape's cheating, or crack gloves are cheating, or like this sort of stuff, and it's just like, I want to go and have a good time,
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I want to tape up, and I want to do the route. I don't want to be like bleeding for 5 days afterwards. So yeah, tape up.
Cams or wires?
Ooh, cams or wires. Ooh. It depends where you're climbing, isn't it? I think it's got to be cams, because we're talking about crack climbing here,
Yeah.
and I think cams helped push the standards of crack climbing, like definitely, without a doubt. So go cams, and I wouldn't have been able to do it like all the big roof crack routes without cams.
Yeah.
So cams.
Cams.
Yeah.
Sandstone cracks or granite cracks?
Sandstone. Yeah, I go sandstone. But that's maybe because just of one specific place in the desert, the Canyonlands, where all the roof cracks are.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And that's sandstone, so yeah.
Cool. Short and hard or long and pumpy?
Long and pumpy. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm not very good at bouldering, so yeah, long and pumpy. Just fight it out.
Pressure wound or rock rash?
Both can be bad. Probably go rock rash.
Rock rash.
Yeah, I
Have a
think.
choice.
Yeah, I feel like a bad pressure wound can go really deep.
Yeah.
And then it can prevent you from climbing.
Yeah.
Whereas you can always like put something over like a scab
Okay,
or something like that, can't you? You can always like patch it up.
Yeah, put some tape on it.
Yeah, put some tape on it and stuff. Whereas if you've got like a really deep like pressure wound and it's just fully bruised, you just don't want to put your hand or foot or anything back in there. So yeah.
Okay, last one then. Colour preference of crack climbing trousers due to unfortunate mistakes.
Yeah.
Red or brown?
It's got to be brown, hasn't it? yeah, brown. Yeah.
Yeah. Ah, cool. Well, there we go. There's
Pop
Pete's
quiz.
answers to his own pop quiz.
Yeah, my answers. I've never answered them before, so there we go.
If you guys want to see all the other famous climbers answer this pop quiz,
Get the book.
Get the book.
Yeah.
Get the book.
Yeah, I was quite psyched at the people who I got to answer the question.
Big names in there.
Yeah, some good names, and like old and new as well.
Yeah.
So it's quite fun. There's people, like you got Lynn Hill and Peter Croft, and then you've got like Nico Favres and Beth Rodden and Hazel, and there's loads of good people in there. It's good.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Okay, moving on from your pop quiz then. So we just saw on social media that you've got Crackfest coming up.
Yes.
Tell us about Crackfest. What is
Crackfest.
it? When's it happening? Where? What do people need to know?
Yeah, so it's on the 7th of March, and it's basically, we wanted to create a competition that was, it's obviously like based around crack climbing, but we just wanted to make it like a fun, off the beaten track sort of like set of crack themed boulder problems, and basically like just have an emphasis on it being fun rather than serious, and we're just going to have it so it covers sort of like all abilities, easy to hard, and then some sort of like crack type challenges as well, and then within the comp, we're also going to run the popular like crack school events like alongside the competition. So the competition will sort of like run all day. It's not like a short 2-hour thing. It'll run all day, and then if people are struggling on something, they can go for an hour crack school, and then they can learn.
This must be the only climbing competition where you can get free
coaching.
Free coaching.
Yeah. Which is why it's like more of why we called it like Crack Fest as well, like Crack Festival. Just because it's not just a competition. There's like other elements to it as well. So with the crack schools, for example.
That sounds cool.
So yeah, that's kind of the basic details.
Well, that was awesome. Thanks, Pete, for talking us through your book.
Yeah, no problem. It was good.
Answering all our questions.
Answering all our ridiculous questions and things like that. Obviously, if you haven't got the opportunity to visit your own Crackmaster guru, then do check out Pete's book. We'll put a link in the description for that and stuff. But yeah, just a massive thank you for letting us come around and speak to you. And
cheers for popping by.
No, it's been great, and we can confirm it's just as hard as it looks.
Yeah.
It's
nails.
I'll see you again at Crackfest.
Yeah. We'll see if we can.
We'll try and get there.
See if we can get down to Crackfest. That'd be cool. Well, thanks very much.
Good.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right.
Favourite fruit vegetable? Ketchup. Push the feet in.
That's like at least a foot.
Yeah. So we had to stash a rope in the middle of the route.